And we are live with the 18th episode of the Think Fitness Life podcast. This week, we're going to talk about conditioning. And for those of you who are just joining with us, we are typically three personal trainers. Today, we're short Mike. We just have Eric and myself. And we have a lot of experience. And we really wanted to shout that experience out to the rest of the world and help empower people and let people understand that, you know, this industry isn't as scary as people make it out to be, and it's a little bit more simpler than what might already be portrayed out there. So yeah, we talk about psychology, exercise, and just general lifestyle and nutrition, specifically sleep, recovery periods, all that stuff, because it's the bigger picture. And the other thing we like to talk about is just feel free to write in an email, whether it's a question, whether you saw something cool, you have a comment or concern, any constructive criticism. We'd love to hear from our listeners. The email is thinkfitnesslife, all one word, @gmail.com. Again, that's thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. We also have another announcement that we crossed our 500 download mark, which is pretty cool. Just yeah, right? The first milestone of many. I'm proud to say that I won't be announcing anything else like that unless we hit 1,000, or when we hit 1,000, I should say.
Exactly.
So yeah, today's episode, we have a couple announcements from Eric, and then we're going to dive into conditioning, cardiovascular work, most known as cardio. But that's too general of a term, and we're going to break it down further into the different reasons why you do different modalities, and we'll talk about energy systems in the body. So, Eric, what do you got for announcements?
So I was scrolling through the web today, and I found on a research article about how vitamin D levels in the body, and that the lower the levels of vitamin D can actually lead to higher rates of colon cancer. And the study actually was about higher levels of vitamin D actually decreasing your risk of colon cancer. And it was very interesting. There's been a lot of research out there with it works, it doesn't work, high levels of vitamin D good, no effect. But this one actually showed that above the recommendation that we have now as a standard, it actually can help improve, which, hey, if there's insight and further research shows down the line that it can help improve this, I can get on board with that. And I think a lot of times it was saying people aren't getting near enough to the recommendation, and that the recommendation is a little bit too low, that they want to start changing the recommendation of vitamin D, which is the best way is sun exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember talking with my dad when I was first kind of getting into the industry and talking about different gaps in people's healths and kind of like the bigger picture. And, you know, in the end of the day, it was funny because, you know, we're just talking for all these specifics, micronutrients and all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's just diet and exercise, diet and exercise. But yeah, I mean, I remember learning that vitamin D deficiencies in particular are so common that up till maybe I want to say 5 years ago, they used to have a test that would test your vitamin D levels that would be covered under your insurance. And then it switched where insurance companies said, we're not going to pay for that because you're definitely deficient. Like they just said, no, the vast majority of people are so deficient that we're not going to cover that test anymore. And it's just, yeah, like you said, we're just not getting enough sun.
And even now, like the lower levels of intake can lead to less bone density, which in its own can be a problem, especially as we age and especially for women. So it's definitely got to be out there that, you know, we have to increase vitamin D throughout, you know, the whole year. And I know it's tough with winter and all, but people have to realize that the sun isn't that bad. I mean, it's bad if you get crazy exposure, but 15-20 minutes is going to really help your vitamin D stores in your body.
Yeah, they used to, you know, another change in the industry or health industry. They used to say like the sun was bad, the sun was bad. You know, always put sunblock on, always put sunblock on, and then I remember, I don't know, it was probably closer to 10 years ago, um, where they came out with what you just said. They said 15 to 20 minutes of no sunscreen on at all first has more benefits than um, costs, essentially. But yeah, vitamin D plays a huge role in modulating your and regulating your immune system. So
A lot of people think vitamin D is just for like bone health, but like you said, immune system is huge. Antioxidant properties are huge for vitamin D, and that's where people lack that completely. And you could almost, well, you could say that it almost has a neuro effect, because if you don't get enough vitamin D, people get that, what's it, seasonal depression, where winter hits and they get,
yeah, seasonal affective
yeah,
disorder.
and it's too much sun is a bad thing. It's an extreme. But if you're getting a good dose every day, it doesn't have to be like every single day at the exact same time. But if you get any kind of light exposure, that's very good for your body.
Yeah, and a key issue too is we lack a lot of other deficiencies, and people always try to get like magnesium supplements or iron supplements or whatever it may be, but or calcium as well. And um, vitamin D is actually, I don't know how it does it necessarily in a scientific way, but it's actually a key component towards the absorption of all those other micronutrients.
Yeah. And what a lot of people are supplementing with isn't the best form of that nutrient or mineral. So you can, if you go to a grocery store or a pharmacy or a supplement store and see vitamin D on the shelves, that's not the same vitamin D that you're getting from the sun. It's still a vitamin D,
Yeah.
which will help you, but it's not as beneficial as like sunlight and natural vitamin D.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I would really recommend for those doing research on supplementation and just making sure that your body has all of the key components that it needs for functioning. Use the term whenever you're searching for something and its form. Look up the term and incorporate bioavailability, and that's just the way that something or a substance is set up so that it's going to actually be effective in your body and absorbed by your body. And a lot of these mainstream, I guess supplements is the best word, aren't the necessarily in the situated in the best form to get it absorbed into your system. Like they talk about iron and magnesium again in like say spinach, and your body doesn't really absorb it out of spinach the way it does say out of salmon. So that's also a key component. Just because something has it doesn't necessarily mean that your body knows how to interact with it or absorb
And
it.
on the lines with that, you also have to know about absorption. Like with spinach, certain vitamins you have to have fat with. So if you're taking a vitamin D supplement, you should be taking that with some sort of fat to help that vitamin get released into the body. If not, you're just wasting your money, and that vitamin's not going to get absorbed. But
Yeah, I don't do a hormonal test yet. Um, but when people come to me and they've been doing the same routine for 6 7 months, or they aren't seeing results, or they're gaining weight, or their body's slowly deteriorating, and we look at their nutrition and it's super clean, almost too clean. People are always avoiding fats, and most of the time when someone comes to me and they're like metabolically broken, essentially is what I would refer to it as, or metabolically dysfunctional, it's because they're not having any fats whatsoever in their diet. And I feel like we are getting better at wrapping our head around sugars being more of the enemy rather than fats being that bad word to say. But I feel like it's still kind of ingrained in people's old ways to just avoid fats, and that's not the case. Fats are good for you. Fats play a huge role. I mean, most of your 32 trillion cells, or whatever, 37 trillion cells of your body are made up of fat or collagen, and which are just glucose chains. But um, back to my point, you have to understand the way that some of these vitamins or the way that some of these micronutrients are absorbed into your system. And vitamin D is just such an important one that we really don't get enough. And it's right there, it's right outside. And it doesn't have to be a bright sunny day if you do get vitamin D. You can absorb vitamin D through clouds. So it really amazes me as a culture. We've really, gone from caves to houses to just being locked away in our comfort of our own home and in our underwear and ordering everything on Amazon Prime and DoorDash and all these convenient ways to never have to go outside.
Oh man.
And it just creates shortcuts or shortcomings in people's
You
bodies.
want to know what else I crazy when I was reading today? I also read an article that said toddlers. I don't know how you're big on parenting and stuff. Toddlers are eating more sugar nowadays than they were in any previous decade. They're eating up to a more than 7 teaspoons of added sugar a day. That's more than the daily recommended intake for a woman. Wrap your head around that, and that's a toddler from like 19 months to 24 months, and it's just that like aggravates me.
I don't even know what to say to that.
It's
Yeah.
frustrating. So if people are listening and you have young kids or want to have young kids, just be mindful of what you're putting in front of them, because it's always just tough to see them eating processed foods with a lot of sugar, and that's just going to drive obesity rates up tenfold.
Yeah, and just understand that it's more than just the behavior. You're not only just conditioning somebody to enjoy sweets. It's you're literally, and at such an impressionable age, you're literally changing the wiring in their brain to seek enjoyment and pleasure out of more sugar things than say a nutrient dense thing. And you know, a lot of people look at this as well. If that's how the science works, and that's how the science works, and like, well, yeah, but we also have to remember that we've drastically changed the environment with which we were first had to adapt to, and not only like is there the battle between what type of sweetener, because I'd much rather you have like a cookie that is made with real ingredients and sugar than say something with corn syrup or high fructose corn syrup or sucralose or aspartame or any of that stuff. Like if there's the best sweeteners out there, the research suggests stevia because it's plant based. Your body knows how to absorb it better. It's not a foreign object coming in. And then they also say that dates, the sugars from dates, tend to be better for you than say like brown sugar or something like that. But yeah, you like in the way that this is the best analogy I could come up with off the top of my head. The way that water travels and creates its own riverbeds in the earth also shapes and guides the water. So the same way that the brain has different sort of wirings already, we can change that and we can make things worse for us or make things better for us. And when you resort to giving kids sweets all the time, you make them more prone to want that. And the other piece I wanted to include in that is I remember hearing about this in a documentary that it was just a theory. They didn't have really facts to back this up, but they had like different studies that showed evidence to support the theory that your body's kind of survival mechanism is to seek energy input with as minimal energy expenditure as possible. If you think
Mm-hmm.
about trying to find food in the winter, you're burning calories being alive. You're burning calories moving around. You want to be efficient as possible and you want like calorically dense things. So sugar and like honey, stuff like that per bite, that is just so calorically dense compared to like a bowl of spinach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and you're dead on. We're talking different times. Even 100 years ago was different because people were moving more. There wasn't a lot of sitting, farming, all that stuff. You have a demand for energy. Now we don't. People sit at desks, sit at home. They don't do anything. They eat this stuff, and the body's like, well, I still want to be the most efficient at what I do. I'm expecting you to do this because along the lines of history, this is what the body has done, and we're not doing it. And that's where you get all these complications that go along with eating those kinds of foods.
Yeah, that is a really good point. We definitely we're a lot more active as a culture, and yeah, those are two good articles that you brought up. So thanks for sharing
Yeah,
those.
sometimes I can read them, sometimes I can't. It just gets me too boiled up. But it's good to get the information out.
Yeah, I remember actually. I mean, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of, you think you're being healthy. You have like applesauce, you have yogurt, you have um, maybe a granola bar, and you're thinking to yourself like, all right, I'm getting like all natural foods. I'm getting good stuff for my kids, and like in reality, you're giving them sugar and sugar and sugar and sugar. And I remember my niece. She's 3 years old now, and or she'll actually be 3 this year. Excuse me. And she she had a sweet something, whatever it was, I forget what it was, but then she's like, I want a applesauce, I want a yogurt, and she like goes to the fridge and pulls it out, and I said stop, that's too much sugar, pick one. And she gave me the nastiest look I've ever been given. But you got to do it. You got to be the tough love parent.
That's what
And
I am. I'm the mean uncle that has no fun with food. But hey,
me too. Me too. I don't mess
it's
around.
tough to see when they get all the junk food and stuff. But like at the same time, like stunting growth and development, all this stuff, and you're like, I can't do it.
Well, that's one thing that's actually, I think, a huge benefit, and I think people should try shortened eating windows or fasting, because you start to realize that part of the fact that you just were eating so much all day was because you had little cravings here and there, and you're just fulfilling your cravings, and that impulsive need that is almost more animalistic behavior than a well thought out decision. Because sometimes I'll sit there and be like, oh man, like I don't know, when I first started doing it, like now I don't really have any cravings anymore, but I'd be like, oh, I kind of want this, like, or that, and it just be an excuse to put something sweet in my body. And I don't know, it's interesting, but definitely we'll have to get to that at another podcast, the whole fasting part. But let's hop into conditioning, because there's a lot to discuss here. But you had one thing you want to say?
I'm good. I'm ready for
Okay.
some energy system development.
Good, because I'm going to learn a lot from you in this podcast for sure. So we should probably tell the audience what we did. Well, Menchie is definitely the evil genius when it comes to programming, in my opinion, and more specifically with we'll just call it general energy system development, cardio, whatever you want to refer to it as. And so he wrote kind of a 2-day conditioning workout that I had to do. So I did one conditioning day on Tuesday and one conditioning day on Thursday, with weight training on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I knew a little bit about what I was doing, but you can definitely dive into more of the science behind it. But so then I executed it for 2 weeks so far. I'm going to go for a full month and see how my systems improve. But man, I don't know if you had fun torturing me and thinking of these workouts, or if you were trying to actually be methodical with everything, but they were good. They were good workouts. So let's go ahead and just briefly talk about, you had 2 days, right? One aerobic capacity day and one anaerobic capacity day. Is that right? How you break those up like
and
that?
it can be, whatever you want to focus on, but I kind of tend to like to definitely heavy focus on aerobic, which will probably be another podcast, but more the anaerobic side of kind of using energy that way. That was your day two that probably made you want to probably kick me straight in the face.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with day two, until I gave you my feedback after the first week, and you told me no, you did that part wrong, and we'll go into that part later. But Yeah, I mean, the way I understood it is one day I'm working on sort of my oxidative system and being able to turn over power quicker, and the other day I'm working on gassing out but having my body produce lactate, which will help clean out the hydrogen ions building up in the muscle that causes fatigue, and get better at the, it's called the Cori cycle, I believe, where your body takes lactic acid and makes glucose out of it. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay, so I'm improving both systems, right? Like I'm improving my body creating lactate and the Cori
Basically getting
cycle.
your body to a point where it can maintain homeostasis at whatever I throw at you, which right now with the programming, it's going to get tough, especially on the threshold days and the lactate days expected. But kind of go back like the aerobic days just kind of build that base and always working on that aerobic system because that's what's going to help you out in the long run, keep replenishing ATP over and over again. If you say this, if you didn't have the aerobic
So
day and you went straight into the heavy conditioning day, the threshold training, you would see results for the first couple weeks, but you would fall short of any kind of power output, capacity, or just recovery.
just because I lack that, like basically foundation of being
Correct.
able to hold
Yeah.
on to something or
Yes,
at a
and most
certain
people will
level.
jump into a lot of these high intensities right off the bat without building an aerobic capacity or aerobic base under them. And that's a big mistake because they get into these settings and programs where it ramps up, and eventually they can't pass their threshold because they don't have a base under them to sustain that. So they just keep gassing out, gassing out. They feel like they're getting a good workout, but they're not actually getting the effect and training conditioning that we want them to, which will lead to plateaus and
So
deep, like down the road deconditioning, but poor training and just fall off of what your
right.
goals are.
So, but essentially, if you were trying to just understand this on a basic level, it would be like the aerobic capacity day is about being able to make it through like a full 90-minute soccer game, being able to move that whole time. And then the other day, the lactate capacity day, is me being able to not only play that full 90 minutes of soccer, but when I do short burst sprints on the field, being able to maintain that intensity from the first minute to my sprint that happens at the
Correct.
90th minute.
And for duration too.
Okay.
So say the ball kicked over
Okay.
midfield and you
Okay.
have to go 40 yards that way, and then you have to come 40 yards back real quick. We're talking anywhere from 30 to 50 seconds maybe of time, and that's where we need to be able to sustain that high energy output to make your systems go and not feel like you're losing speed, losing power. Sustain that.
And that's
Correct.
why you need both because they're working
Yes, and that's
together,
why
hand in
soccer is
hand.
such a great sport because it's predominantly aerobic, but you get these short sprint bursts or even longer where you have to be able to maintain that threshold or keep that lactate at bay because if you don't have any of that, you're not going to be able to play 90 minutes. And it's a grueling 90 minutes.
But these two conditioning days would be something that you would also have written because these aren't two conditioning days that are only for like a soccer player.
Oh
This would
yeah.
work for like a football player,
This
a
will work
basketball
for
player.
a lot
Okay.
of people
Okay. And just because it's just generally, it doesn't come down to like conditioning for the actual sport. It's just about conditioning your body to be
at different systems, correct.
efficient.
So anyone across the board can utilize these sort of programs or 1 or 2 days and it will work for multiple sports.
Okay. So before we dive into that first aerobic capacity day, because I do want to talk about it like from start to finish so that people listening can get an idea of what an aerobic capacity day should look like versus just jogging on the treadmill
That's
monotonously
what
for
most people
60
think
minutes.
aerobic capacity is,
Um,
or cardio.
right. They just think they just
Yeah.
got to run until they get tired, and that's aerobic capacity. Um, but so part of this whole energy system and conditioning is we talk about our oxidative system, and that's the ability to and I really should just
Oh,
be
go for
letting
it.
you lead this, and I should just be sitting back, probably not even saying anything. But It's your ability to pull from multiple energy systems in the body, correct? The oxidative system.
Different energy substrates, we'll call it.
Okay.
So think
So
you can
okay,
burn
so okay, so the oxidative system is basically just able to burn
yes,
different
using
things for
oxygen.
fuel. Okay. Okay. So our we have three main
Correct.
energy systems, correct? Other than some of the other mechanisms in our body where we recycle different things, but our three main ones, we talk about the Krebs cycle, or when people are in ketosis, using fats for energy. We talk about your creatine phosphate system, which is literally the glycogen that is already stored in our muscle and the glycogen that's already stored in our liver,
That's more
correct?
anaerobic glycolysis. The ATP,
Okay, okay, okay. So why don't you
so
take this part then?
the creatine phosphate system is just going to be based on your ability to resphosphorylate ATP in that creatine in that system alone, and that's just going to be a short burst, like 10 to 12 seconds, and that system's pretty much cut off. Now it's still replenishing, but it's not going to replenish at the rate you're producing power. Then after the 12 seconds, we get into the anaerobic lactic or anaerobic glycolysis, and that's where we start burning the glycogen, the glucose. Still, we're not using oxygen for this energy system, but we're breaking that down as a source of replenishing the ATP. And then once you get about 60 seconds plus, sometimes 60 to 90 seconds plus, you start getting to that aerobic oxidative system where you're bringing in oxygen from outside air in the body to complete the combustion of substrates to create ATP. And they're all working at the same time to get ATP to every single enzyme reaction in your body to supply energy.
Okay, so we have ATP is like the main source. That's the bread and butter we're looking for. And then we have stored energy already in our system, and then we have like basically carbohydrates that we've eaten
Yep.
most recently. Is that correct? Is that fair to say? Okay. And then we have our fat. So
Okay.
that I guess that's what I
Yeah.
was getting at when I said like
Yeah.
three
So
main
we
energy sources.
utilize those differently. So the system or the creatine phosphate, that's not going to break down carbohydrates or fat or protein. The glycolysis will, anaerobic glycolysis, and then you get to oxidative, which is fat, and then eventually, if you don't have fat, you can break down protein for energy. But you don't. But we don't want to get there. No one wants to get to that point.
Gluconeogenesis. Right. um, let's go into this workout. So the aerobic capacity day, we every day started with a warm up, something to get the heart rate up, something to get the circulation going, raise your core temperature, and then I did some type of dynamic warm up. I mean, this is just basic exercise modalities, and then I did some type of movement prep. That should be in everybody's program. You should have some type of warm up to raise your core temperature. There's some type of movement prep, or we call it a dynamic warm up versus like static stretching, and then we go through some just a couple exercises just to prime the body for the load you're about to put on it for the rest of the workout. So then we went into the main workout, and I was working, whether it was a ski erg or a battle rope or a Versa climber, something that was body weight, cardiovascularly pushing myself, and I was doing work for 20 seconds and doubling my rest period, so it ended up being 40 seconds, and I would do 10 rounds of that. Then I would rest for 2 to 3 minutes, and I would go into again more body weight stuff. This was 3 sets, and this was three different sort of explosive ballistic movements, and it was about 10 reps for each movement. And I'd rest 30 seconds before moving on to the next movement, and then boom, 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 3 rounds of that. Then rest for 3 minutes, grab some water, and then I did a really, really heavy. Um, I just did a sled push. So I just did a really heavy sled push. for about 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Or excuse me, that was another doubling the rest period. So 15 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 10 sets of that again. Then I grabbed water, rested for 3 minutes, and I did 2 sets of the fan bike or the row or something that's pushing yourself for 60 seconds, kind of all out. And yeah, at the end of that, I am drenched in sweat. I didn't really feel like I wanted to die necessarily. That definitely happened on Thursday. But after doing the ballistic movements, the explosive movements, and then going into like a really heavy sled push, that really winded me, and I had to really focus on my breathing because otherwise I was just doing that hyperventilation
when you get
breathing.
to that point, it's tough because the way it's programmed is you're going from that almost aerobic plyometric where you're still training the fast twitch fibers to the high resistance intervals, which I'm still taxing those fast twitch fibers to be more oxidative. So your body's like, holy F, what is going on right now? So your type 2 fibers are like just pumping out and trying to use oxygen as best it can because it's not used to using it at that rate, pushing that heavy resistance or going that fast and explosively.
So explain to me what I'm working on through each phase. So essentially, the workout had like an A, B, C, and D. A was something aerobic, double the rest period for the work. B was that 3 exercise circuit. C was the sled, and D was the fan bike. Explain to me what's going on in my body and what I'm improving on and what I'm
So the
working on
first three, the
in
battle
each of those
ropes,
phases.
the broad jump, slide board, vertical jumps, and the sled pushes that are heavy, that's focused on using your fast twitch fibers oxidatively. What most people think of conditioning or cardio, they think long, slow duration, which you can do, which is more primarily slow twitch fibers. So what we want to do with this is we're ramping up your fast twitch fibers to get more of an oxidative effect. So to utilize oxygen and energy a lot more so they become less fatigue and they kind of resist that so you can actually operate a lot longer. And this is where people sometimes get in trouble is because they just train the slow twitch fibers to be good at what they do, and then those fast twitch don't get the conditioning effect or they don't get oxidative enough. So there's a huge gap from, hey, I ride a bike 3 times a week for 30 minutes, I'm going to go play soccer and be good. It's like, no, as soon as you start sprinting, these type 2 fibers are going to have to pick up the slack, and that's where a lot of people don't train the aerobic system efficiently. And I for athletes, a lot of people
Hmm.
is training fast twitch fibers because you're going to get more adaptation is the way to go in my eyes. So I program a lot of oxidative fast twitch improvement into my conditioning or energy system development programs for people.
So who would want the
think
slow
think
twitch
marathon runners,
conditioning
yeah, long
effect? Like a
distance,
a
like
long distance
Ironman. It's
run?
it's still good
Okay.
in its own. It has a different effect on the body, but if you're more in these, say, soccer, basketball, football, all these things where you have to push a lot of force or push against something very heavy at a certain time, you want your fast twitch to recover quicker, have more energy, and be able to utilize more often.
And so what if you're just like a general everyday person, or general population, excuse me, rather than like an athlete or professional athlete? What's the benefit of say doing oxidating your fast twitch fibers
Majority of
versus your slow
people,
twitch?
or let's say the human body, will love to use slow twitch fibers through the size principle and recruitment order. Slow twitch, and then you get to the fast twitch on the motor recruitment scale. So what a lot of people do is they'll stay in the type 1. So they're training type 1 fibers to be good at, you know, burning fat, using oxygen, all that stuff. But they're leaving all these fast twitch fibers unutilized and they're just sitting there. And those are basically the powerhouses of your system. And they're going to have, like I said, a lot more adaptability to change. So if you're trying to lose weight and all you're doing is cardio using type 1, that's good. But if you want to get a bigger bang and more metabolic action out of fibers, type 2 are the way to go. So training the type 2 will actually have a better overall increase in your body's adaptation to your goals. So if it's fat loss, you're going to get a better, bigger overall system workforce because you're training different fiber types, which are requiring more energy and more development.
Interesting. So I'd be curious to see if there is a way to, or a stat out there that shows you what percentage of your muscles are type 1
The toughest
versus
thing is I've
what
read
percentage
a
are
lot of
type
research on
2.
in books is
But
you'd have to do a muscle biopsy because everyone is different. Like,
just based upon what they're doing.
mhm.
Back to the analogy of
and
the riverbed
but
and the
you can
water.
genetics isn't
Okay,
the end
that
all be
makes
all. And a
a
lot of
lot of
people be like,
sense.
okay, genetics is it. This is say I have 25% fast twitch, 75% slow twitch. That's it. That's not how it goes because training your fibers can adapt. Yes.
Can change that. Absolutely. And that was sort of my point. I probably butchered it, but that was sort of my point with that whole analogy. I actually learned it from The Brain That Changed Itself by Norman Doidge. And the analogy is, again, like the water is the nurture and the environment is the nature. And it's trying to say that they both play a role. Like, yes, in some way, the earth dictates where the water goes, but in a portion of it is the water also creates its own channels. So yeah, kind of like what you said, like don't accept that genetics is the be all end all. That's just you're just being small minded or making excuses for yourself because you can absolutely change your genetics. You can change all this stuff with hard work, dedication, and consistency. Honestly, it's as simple as that. Um, but so training your type 2 to be more oxidative than your type 1 is going to require more energy expenditure. So generally you're going to burn more calories and most likely you'll probably be um, less likely to gain weight. You'll probably be better at fighting
Yeah.
off infection, little things like that. And that's the benefit towards
Because even if
just
you even
being
think
in a
about
slow twitch state versus a
if your
fast twitch.
body, say you eat carbs and fat in a meal, and your type 1 fibers are going to utilize those energies, and you're not even letting those type 2 fibers get any of that stuff, they might get the energy and store it, but if they never use it, what's the point of having them there? So you're just wasting a lot of energy expenditure and a lot of
Okay. So you're not even like if you just did like steady state like whatever on the treadmill on the stair mill for like 16 minutes 90 minutes whatever you go for a long run outside for 26 miles, say you went and ran a marathon. When you supplement, when you eat, when you renutrient or replenish your nutrients, you're you've only stimulated your
well,
type
they're
1
going to get
fibers to absorb those
they're
resources
going to
more
get a
so than
lot
your
of
type
that
2.
energy because they're going to require it. Where the type 2, yeah, so the type 2 might take that
because
in, but
because
if they
they've been
don't
doing most of the
utilize the
work.
fat,
Okay.
it gets stored as fat. And then if it doesn't use the fat again, it gets stored as fat again. So see where I'm going with this? Like if you don't use these like the powerhouse of the mitochondria won't use these energy, fat, carbs, or protein, they'll just sit there and it's like wasted. And that's how over time people do long distance
Yeah.
cardio and they're like, why am I
Yeah.
gaining weight if that's the case? Because they're not tapping into the potential of
Gaining weight. Yeah.
using
No.
more
Right. I
of
was
what
just
they're
going to
putting
mention
into their
that.
body. And that's why I like to use the fast twitch fibers in the aerobic capacity way to really stimulate that and get them into different types of training and adaptations to those fibers. And that's what a lot of this day is about.
Cool. So let's talk about the lactate capacity day. You want to run through and talk about what you programmed for that one after the
Yeah.
same warm up, same exact
So
warm
we
up.
had starting off
You
sled
want to just
push,
run through what you
which we
had me
did
do?
5 reps at 60 seconds duration. So we're just driving up that duration of time. We moved on to circuit, so overhead carries, med ball slams, walking lunges, and we did for the overhead carries 25 yards down and back, med ball slams, 10 reps, walking lunges, 15 yards. And we did that in a continuous circuit, no rest for 10 minutes straight. Then rest, recover, and we hit fan bike thresholds, 5 minutes on, all out, rest for 2 minutes, another another 5 minutes, and that was
I
day
hate
two
you. I
of the
hated
conditioning.
you. I
And my
hated you. So it sounds so easy, everybody. It sounds so easy. You're like, that's 4 things. That's 5 things. That's nothing.
40,
And
45,
yeah,
done.
the workout is over in like 45 minutes, but it's it's miserable. Like the sled push, all right, not so bad. You get through two, maybe the third one of pushing a sled for 60 seconds.
Yep.
And I did 180
Yeah, 'cause you don't want
pounds
to
because you said
gas
like pick a
yourself
moderate
or
weight,
fatigue
not
yourself
don't go too
completely where
heavy.
you can't move. You want
So
to pick a weight where you can sustain just under your threshold.
gotcha. Okay, so that was perfect because there were times that, like, probably that fourth and fifth set, I was standing there like, oh, I want to sit down. I want to sit down, but it was just like right on that cusp. So yeah, so it was a 60-second push, but like not just pacing yourself to make it 60 seconds. It's once you pick that moderate weight, whether it's anywhere from 50 pounds to 180 pounds, just sort of based on your starting point. You're pushing, just push as sort of as hard as you can, and then just keep going. That first 30 seconds is pretty easy. It's that second 30 seconds that sucks. So definitely just set an app or a timer on your phone just so you can hear the bell ring rather than watch the seconds tick by. So yeah, that part's good to get through because usually by like the third set, I'm feeling it but feeling like, all right, I just got to go downhill now. Like I already did 3, I got 2 left. The next part, set a timer again, 10 minutes. Just get through as many rounds as possible. The overhead carries, the med ball slams, and the walking lunge. I did those more by distance. The walking lunge was no body, or it was all body weight. The overhead carries is 50 yards, 25 yards down and back. The walking lunge was 15 yards down and back, and in between that was just a simple medicine ball slam with 10 slams. And we have those big ones that we had at Equinox, so they bounced kind of nice. It wasn't too miserable. I only got through 5 rounds though in 10 minutes, and to be fair, Menchie did tell me anywhere from 5 to 8. So the goal is to try to get 6 rounds next time, and slowly build up to that 8, so I can get that capacity or be good at that building up of that lactate.
Killer.
But the freaking brutal part is that the nail in the coffin, that 5-minute fan bike. And the first week, I just thought, oh, I'm looking at the program like, oh, 5 minutes on the fan bike. Like, okay, I just got to go 5 minutes. So I'm just pacing myself to try to maintain like 250 watts for 5 minutes. That was pretty tough. I'm not gonna lie, that wasn't easy. That was pretty tough. But then after talking with you, Menchie was like, no, you did it all wrong. Like you have to like just go all out and just push yourself to your max capacity. You're gonna hit that wall, but you're gonna learn to just keep pushing once you keep hitting that wall. So, sure enough, I get on there and I'm grooving, I'm pushing, I'm like, I'm gonna crush this, and I'm just feeling so hungry, so confident, so eager, and fatigue's starting to set in. And I'm starting to slow down. I'm starting to feel my shoulders, feel my quads, and I'm having to slow my pace.
Yeah.
And I look up, and it's only been like 55 seconds. And oh man, it is such a mental thing though, because my timer on my phone counts back from 300 or from 300 seconds, and the one on the bike goes up. So it didn't really make much of a difference because I just try to keep my eyes closed the whole time. But once I keep like checking the time and I keep trying to push myself for short burst sprints when I feel like I have the energy, but more so just like, all right, just try it. And when it didn't feel like I wanted to die, breathing like crazy, I'd all right, push it again for like a couple seconds. But I remember distinctively looking down and being like, oh my gosh, it's 2:30. I still have another 2:30 to go, and like feeling my quads on fire, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to stop. And then looking over at my phone because I had it like mounted up like on a pedestal, and it's like counting down, and at this point it's at like 150, 140. I'm like, oh, I can do this. And it's like literally the pain in my quads just kind of went away. So I don't know how to say it except that this 5-minute fan bike threshold, we'll call it, just pushing yourself to the max and keep pushing through it, it's such a mental thing. Your body has the ability, but your mind will and your psychology will get you to quit sooner than your
When did you want to
body
quit?
needs to quit. And
After 60
I
seconds?
think the first time I wanted to quit was after that first. No, I wanted to quit at that 2 minute mark, that 2 minute 30 mark, when I was just like, oh my gosh, because by then I had already gassed myself out at that 55 and slowed down my pace, and then I'm just doing short burst sprints every time I got it, and every time I got it, I keep pushing it, and every time I got it, I keep pushing it, and by like that 2.5 mark, I'm like open mouth breathing really heavily, and um I mean, I got off the bike after that 5 minutes, and I just laid down for a second, and the first thing I roll over, and I'm on all fours, and I'm just, and nothing's going through my head. Like there's no real thoughts that I can even remember, but I felt like I did it. But I just remember thinking like, I can't believe I have to do this again. I gotta do this again. I gotta do this again. Um, but yeah, I got up, and probably about 30, 45 seconds later, I was still alive. That was the biggest thing. It was like, yeah, it hurt. It sucked. There were a lot of times I wanted to call it. But I made a little promise myself that if I made it through that first one, that full 5 minutes of just keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, that for the second set, I could just do like a short burst sprint every 30 to 40 seconds. Because like I said, last week I didn't do any sprints at all. I just kind of paced myself for a full 5 minutes. So what I wanted to do was, and this is an area I struggle with. I definitely struggle with mental toughness and getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And I said, okay, so this week I want to do at least one the right way and one of that pacing myself, because that was still tough. It wasn't easy. So once I did it and completed it, I was like, all right, I can do this. I can do this a second time. Again, I still only went like, I would go a minute and then a 10-second short burst sprint, and then a minute again, a 10-second short burst sprint. And then like on the fourth minute, I did a 10-second sprint on the minute and a 10-second sprint at the end of the minute, just kind of finish off. Was my power output anywhere near what I was doing the first set through? No. But it was a huge mental win for myself to say, you did it. You didn't necessarily do it the exact way that we had to do it, in the way that Menchie told you to, but it was a little win in my book, because last week I didn't do it correctly. This week I did basically 1 1/3 correctly, or 1 1/4 correctly. And next week I'm going to shoot for 2. And I think that's something important to remember when you're programming sort of your conditioning days, is that one of them is supposed to build up your capacity, like you said, and one of them is supposed to hit a wall. One of them is supposed to gas you out, and you got to get mentally ready and prepped, and
for that one, the fan bike,
just do it.
It is all mental at a certain point. You're getting a training effect, but it is just how bad do you want to push yourself, and how can you push yourself just to the edge of basically, I'm going to tap out, or I can't move anymore, and you just ride it and you find it. And for most people, it is besides being a great conditioning workout, it's more of a mental toughness in my mind, because it's just you and a bike for 5 minutes. You can throw in the towel whenever you want, like you said.
No, what I did was I actually I wheeled. We have this like little hallway between two, like a yoga studio and a CrossFit studio, and there's like a few windows, and then there's a section where there's no windows at all, and then there's a door that leads to like a maintenance hallway. So I wheeled a fan bike right up to that door, so that I had no visual escape. And I had just a wall in front of me, and I was just like, ain't nothing to it but to do it. I just had me and the bike, and I was just like, I'm not getting off until I get hit that 5 minutes.
10 minutes as hard as you can on a fan bike. Don't stop, and I guarantee you'll be on your back, gasping for air, and be like, "Holy F, what did I just do?"
10 minutes, I would. Man, that's hard to wrap my head around, trying to double that right now. But
it is miserable.
Have you ever done that? Ugh. I remember one time I saw Colin set up on the fan bike, and he did like I think he did 20 on, 40 off for a good hour. And he was still busting out
One of
good
the
power near
one
the
of the
end of
best
it,
machines
but
you
he
can
was just
use for
drenched, just
conditioning
dripping
that
in
fan bike.
sweat. And I don't know, just yeah. No, it's true. It's such an evil machine. So real quick though,
Like for threshold training,
if someone doesn't have a fan bike, what could they
you can do a
use
lot.
in
So if
replace of it?
you know this kind of circuit we did
Yeah.
on day two, the overhead carries, med ball slam, walking lunge. It's not going to be the same, but
The
that is the idea of getting you up to
yeah.
your threshold and just being comfortable up there. You can do it on a regular bike. Just set the resistance a little bit higher. Treadmills it's tough because you need to be really almost all out sprinting the whole time.
Okay.
But a lot of stuff like rowers,
Yeah.
you can do it. Just get on there 5 minutes as fast as you can. Versa climbers, if you have them, those are what I would do. Or you could, if you want a med ball slam for 5 minutes as fast and hard as you can, go for it. There's stuff you can do to drive your heart rate up
Well, I guess you could
at
do.
max
I
intensity,
guess you could do 5 minutes of
and guarantee
burpees.
you that's gonna suck too. Yeah, just straight through. But similar effect, you're gonna get that threshold. You're gonna push yourself to a point where, hey, I have to be good at dealing with
Yeah.
dealing with this buildup of byproducts, and how do I regulate my pH in my body and clear that? And that's also how you're gonna develop this energy system.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like hydrogen ions are building up in the muscle, causing you to fatigue, causing pain, causing you to want to quit. But the better you can get your system at building up lactate, the better it's going to be at cleaning out those hydrogen ions and replenishing your energy or replenishing
Yeah,
that
and
lactic
I like that you
acid
just kind of
back
said
into
back for energy,
um,
because a lot of times people
your
think lactic
energy and
acid is a
using it for
bad thing
energy.
and it causes everything else. Where actually lactate is a very good thing in the body. Our body needs that to deal with the hydrogen buildup and get rid of the hydrogen so we can still do stuff. So lactate is very good. We need to be able to manage it, and that's why you do a day like this. You don't be afraid of lactic acid or the buildup of it. It's like, no, it's that doesn't happen. That doesn't exist. It's a good reason why
Yeah.
there's lactate in the body. It helps give you energy and replenish ATP.
Yeah. And I think to kind of close this off, I just want to just motivate people to try this, give it a shot, program in aerobic capacity days, program in lactate threshold days, and if you don't know how to program it in,
Yeah,
send it an email. This is probably
anything.
the perfect podcast to send it in an email, because I know I'd be sending an email in. um, Luckily I have Menchie at my fingertips, so I can ask him questions at the drop of a dime. But the thing is the stuff that we talked about today, yeah, it sounds tough, and it was written for like more of a general proprietary program for an athlete, but this is all stuff that anybody can do, and the body will adapt. Like, you don't have to start off with 10 sets of 20 on, 40 off of say battle ropes. Start off with 5, then work next week, add 2 more, go to 7, then go to 9, and then you're all of a sudden you're at 10. And it's little wins like that that you have to look at as you're on the right path. um, and the best thing I can say too to help kind of the bigger picture of this is, in the midst of all this, I'm also doing it's also my third week completed of fasting. So all I eat after dinner. I eat like around anywhere from 7 to 9, and I eat breakfast anywhere from 4 to 6. And on some days I go a full 24-hour fast. So today I did that day 2 of that aerobic threshold day, that workout I did today. I didn't eat anything until yesterday at 9 p.m. and I haven't eaten anything yet today. Um, but my body's adapted. I don't feel tired. I don't feel exhausted. I don't have stomach aches. If anything, I feel like I'm not weighed down by that needs to be emulsified in my system and blood in my stomach helping digest. And I feel like I can perform better. I feel like I'm clearer. Um, but the first week, I wanted to die. First week I did this program, I was looking at, like, oh man, only 3 days of weight training. Well, this is gonna suck. And No, it was a new stimulus. I'm learning as I go, and sometimes it's nice to have somebody else write your programs for you rather than writing yourself the stuff that you like to do and that you want to do all the time. Um, but I definitely feel like I'm performing better this week than I did last, just because my body adapted to the work, and I look at every little thing as a win. In the first week, if I you know can only do, I'm trying to think of an example. If the first week I'm doing the sled and I can only do 300 pounds, well, next week I want to see if I can do that sled modality of the 10 by 10 yards with 30 seconds rest. I want to see if I can, add 30 pounds or something. Anything that is taking you a step forward. Doesn't have to be a huge step, but just
Absolutely.
slow,
Couldn't say it better
consistent
myself.
effort will get you to where you want to go. Well, that wraps up conditioning. Hope you guys learned a lot. I know I did. And like I said, if you guys have questions, seriously, don't hesitate to write in thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com. Next week, we'll have Urso back with us, hopefully, and we will talk about goal setting.